Well, hello, everybody. We are obviously here at the Chamber. We're sitting down with Brian Boyer today. It's been an interesting last couple weeks in the community with the whole COVID-19 hitting the community as far as business slowdowns. And we know that a number of businesses are going to be looking to work remotely in the coming days. And a lot of people don't understand really what that means, what's the best process, what's the best software. Even as a chamber, when we're trying to have committee meetings, we're wondering what's that look like and how should we go about that. So today we've got a set number of questions we're going to ask Brian, who has an extensive background of working remotely and working in teams virtually all over the world at one time. So a couple questions for you, Brian, is tell us a little bit about your experience just from working at home, remotely, and what kind of software are you using?
Right. So first of all, thank you for having
No
me in here. I've been working in the tech industry for about 12 years now, and I always love sharing my experience. And I know, especially here in Wooster, a lot of businesses are used to working in an office, and there's been a little bit of some anxiety and skepticism around working from home. I know one local business owner once told me that he doesn't want to hire any employees that he couldn't smell. So I said that's probably more of a problem with your HR department than with what I'm doing. But anyways, I think now we're starting to look at the reality of some employees are going to be working from home, whether they want to or whether they're mandated to. Things have been changing pretty rapidly. So I've been working with multiple organizations in different capacities for the past 12 years, as I mentioned. My current position is as the Director of Platform and Reader Experience with Kitsis.com, which we basically provide educational opportunities for certified financial planners. And this company is 100% remote.
Okay.
We don't have a single office anywhere in the world. And we're a small team. There's about 10 of us full-time and a handful of contractors, and they range anywhere from Spain to California. So we don't see each other very often. So you asked about some of the software that we use to keep ourselves organized. So there's a couple different platforms that I want to talk about. The first is Slack. Slack is going to be, I believe, key for any team that's working remote. This product was designed for remote teams to communicate with each other. It originated out of Silicon Valley of development teams, but now it's expanded out to pretty much any industry. And it's basically a chat app. Okay. But what makes it really unique is you can organize these conversations by what they call channels, and these channels can be a project, a department, whatever. So it keeps your team members organized and keeps the conversations sort of compartmentalized in where they need to go and organized. It also has really good video conferencing capabilities. With one click, you can be chatting with another team member, both voice and video. And I think video is really important for any remote team. It sort of gives you that somewhat face-to-face contact. You can see people's facial expressions and that sort of thing that sort of humans are used to dealing with when they're communicating with other people. It also has some really nice screen sharing capabilities. So if you're collaborating on a project, a document, you can have a team member share their screen and people can actually draw on the screen to sort of give comments and feedbacks in real time. And then finally, the thing that makes this really cool, makes Slack really cool, is the fact that it integrates so well with other products, which I'm going to talk a little bit about when we talk about some of the other products.
So I know there'll be a number of questions off what you just said, Brian.
Right.
So give an idea, so if we have a team of 10 or less or more than 10, what's the price structure? I mean, what am I looking at if I like the Slack? What cost is associated with it? Yeah,
so Slack you should be able to get started for free, especially with a small team. If you want to expand out some of the capabilities, such as archiving a lot of your conversations and that sort of thing, it can you can start paying for it, and I believe it starts somewhere around $6 a user.
Okay.
So it's pretty inexpensive,
Yeah.
especially if you're looking at using this as a short-term solution for your team that's working remote.
Okay. So we've talked internally that if it gets to a point where we're completely remote as a staff, so how, and we only have four staffers right now that we want to pull in. So on a hardware end, so physically, what do I need to have either a conference call or collaborating on one project? What do the staff need for small businesses?
Right. So this is going to be pretty straightforward. You need a computer,
Yeah.
internet connection, and web camera.
Okay.
And one thing that you should keep in mind with the internet connection is your employees working from home are going to be using a residential service rather than a business service. And most residential services have restrictive upload speeds. Because if you think about it, most residential services, you're downloading stuff, you're streaming Netflix, you're going to Facebook, whatever. But some businesses are going to rely a little bit heavier on that upload, especially if you're doing a lot of video conferencing. So that's one thing to just be sensitive and maybe patient about is some of your remote users may have restrictions on what they can upload and how fast they can do that. The web camera, I say web camera instead of microphone because, again, I think that face-to-face communication is so important. And it provides sort of a calming feel that you're not talking to a robot, you're not talking to some, voice out in the ether, like sometimes you have when you talk on a phone. And it just makes it more fun, too. Humans are social creatures. They like to be with other humans. And a lot of my teammates at Kitsis, I've never met in person before, but I still feel very close to them because we chat frequently throughout the day. When we need to ask a question, we do face-to-face video often. So.
What about on the mobile end? A lot of people do FaceTime or they Skype and stuff just through the mobile. You think physically it'd probably be best to be at a computer?
Yeah, it's best be at a computer. If you're using Slack, you can actually use the Slack app to video. There's some restrictions on screen sharing at that point, but I have taken Slack calls on my phone before.
Okay.
If I'm out and about and someone has a question, I can just take it. It works pretty well.
Okay. Email has evolved too, and getting information to employees in real time is really important, especially if you're going to be working on a project or we're going to be using Slack. So, any suggestions on how to keep employees organized and the information readily available for them as they work remotely?
Yeah. So, your cadence of work is going to be a little bit different when you're remote. And that's because when everyone's in an office, you can kind of see what other people are doing, and if someone's stuck on a project, you can talk to them or have those meetings real time. So what I actually recommend is to have regular check-ins, and these are frequently called stand-up meetings. There's if you look at different ways of running a project management and things like that, agile project management refers to stand-up meetings. And at my previous job, I worked for a startup called Curio. The dev team was sort of a hybrid. Some were remote, some were in office. And we did daily check-ins, daily stand-up meetings. And these were only 10 minutes long.
Okay.
So it doesn't take up a big part of the day, but we asked 3 questions. What did you finish since yesterday? What are you working on for tomorrow? And what are the things that are preventing you from getting your work done?
Okay.
Are you waiting for feedback? Are you stuck on a problem? Something like that.
So kind of trying to keep that ball moving.
Yeah, just keep the ball moving. Like I said, we shot for just a 10-minute long meeting every day, and it kept us all informed. It kept the other team members informed of who's doing what, and it really brought the team together, even though some of us were remote.
Okay, interesting. Through your experiences, Brian, what sort of rules or policies do you think employers should consider when working at home? And one thing that I thought of right off the bat when I was reading this question that you gave us, which thank you, is you don't want Jimmy or Sally, your daughter or son, to have access to payroll documents or financials for a company. So any suggestions on that?
Yeah, so this is a hard part of working remote, and it's something that I think employers should think about, especially employers that have never had to work remote before, because I'm willing to bet a lot of the companies that are facing this issue today don't have in their employee handbook how working from home works.
Yeah.
And we have this problem of typically we think of work as work and home as home. And now we have work at home.
Yeah.
And so the question is, how much control does the employer want to exert over their employees when they're in their own home? And I think it's fair to say that, while they're on company time, there should be some expectations. And the biggest one is, really communicate what hours you expect your employees to work.
Okay.
You'll find that when employees work from home, things get a little bit more flexible. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you do want to have everyone available for questions and be able to talk to each other. Like, you don't want Bob, who's a night owl, working at 2 a.m. and trying to get something done, while Sally is a morning person.
Yeah.
At 8 a.m. she's trying to work, but neither of them can ever communicate because they're never working at the same time. So, when I started at Kitsis, one of the first questions I was asked was, what hours are you going to be working? There was a general expectation of getting 40 hours at least done a week. But that was more to communicate to the rest of the team, hey, if you want to work with Brian, he's probably going to be available during these times. And some of our more remote people, like California and Spain, their schedules are more adjusted, which I'm assuming a lot of the companies around here don't have to deal with employees disappearing off to another country.
Exactly.
But one thing to also consider is, and there's been a lot of studies on this, that work-life balance actually becomes more difficult when you work from home because there's not that delineation of I'm at home, I'm at work. And so that might be something else that you want to look at just to help your employees to communicate, hey, if you get a message at 7 p.m., you don't have to answer it.
Okay.
We're just sending it to you because it's on our mind, and that's sort of the role that we have at Kitsis. My boss, Michael Kitsis, he's the type that will have an idea at 3 in the morning or on the weekend, and he'll want to share it right away. But he explicitly says
he doesn't want to lose that thought.
He doesn't want to lose that thought, but he's explicitly told us, don't worry, I don't expect you to respond right away, unless it's a serious emergency, like the server's down and everything's on fire. But, for most things, it's like, hey, just wait till the next business day, it's fine.
But then do you, collectively as a team, then do you have a time in which you start that initial check-in to say, hey, essentially this is the start of the day?
Yeah.
Does that make
sense?
So
we don't have a daily check-in, but what we do as a company is we have weekly department meetings, which really sets the tone for the week, and we do those early in the week.
Okay.
And we actually use a model called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, which I would recommend whether you're remote or not. But during these meetings, we review metrics, we review milestones. We specifically have time set aside for group problem solving, and everyone knows when that meeting starts and when that ends, and we do that so that it doesn't drag on forever, and we're just not talking about random things for forever. The focus is to get stuff done on those calls.
That makes sense. For us, culture is really important at the Chamber. We're a close-knit team, so that communication and just the idea of we are truly a team. So if we go to a working remotely scenario, Brian, you have any suggestions on trying to keep those employees feeling like they're connected to not only the team, but maybe the community?
Yeah, so this is a huge challenge of working remote, and it's been cited as one of the downsides of working remote is having employees feel less connected. Now, the good news is there's ways of getting around that. So first of all, I would recommend keeping an open line of communication. I think it's really important, and not just about the coronavirus, because you are going to have people saying, hey, what's the status of my job, and in certain industries, what are we going to do if we don't get that shipment from China, that sort of thing.
Sure.
But also just regular business issues, stuff that you would normally talk about in the office, because a lot of times you might have ad hoc meetings or just tell people as you see them in the hallways. So you will want to keep them up to date. You definitely don't want to have employees feel isolated or alone. You're going to have some employees that live alone, and you're going to have some employees that have a family. And so, you just want to kind of be sensitive of that, especially since bars and restaurants and everything else are closed. It's really hard to get social interaction nowadays.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, you want to keep them up to date on what's happening in business. I would also strongly recommend finding a way of providing what I call a virtual water cooler. Again, we're humans. We're social creatures. And at work, people talk about their kids, talk about hobbies, and that's not necessarily harmful in the workplace. And when you go to a remote setting, you shouldn't have your employees feel like they can only talk about work during the day. At Kitsis, we've actually dedicated a Slack channel to this.
Okay.
We call it Random Funnies, and people
Okay.
post throughout the day, memes, stories about their kids, funny things they saw, and it's really encouraged to participate in that just because it humanizes the work experience.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're working from home in front of a computer all day, you kind of need that connection. Also, our weekly meetings, as I mentioned earlier, that we have a rule that when these meetings start, everyone has to say give a personal story.
Oh, that's interesting.
So we actually have on the agenda time to talk about personal stuff. Now we limit it. We don't want to talk 3 hours about
Yeah, no kidding.
whatever. But it's important just because that brings out your team's personality. It makes people feel more friendly. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being friends with people you work with.
Sure.
And you should still allow that to happen, even if you're working remote. Finally, I would also suggest allowing employees to take breaks. For some people, some types of personalities are going to be a little bit more stressed working from home than others. And so saying, hey, just go out, take a 5-minute walk, and that's okay. And you also don't know what their setup is at home.
Sure.
My home office is in the basement. I don't have a window.
It's okay.
And so it's nice for me to go upstairs every once in a while and
Don't be a lab rat, right?
see the sunlight. So you might have employees that have similar circumstances where they're working somewhere that might be a dark corner,
Yeah.
just because they don't have a dedicated office at home because they're not used to working at home.
So a couple of things that recapping kind of what we talked about. Maybe this may be valuable. So a couple of the programs, and maybe just I have my laptop here. It's at work, so I'm getting ready to go remotely and work from home. So access to files. So
Yes.
What programs or processes do you suggest there?
Okay. I really prefer Google Docs.
Google Docs.
However,
and
Dropbox.
we use that at the chamber, so yes.
Yeah, Dropbox is another great option. Both of those will integrate with Slack,
Okay.
which makes things easier. If we're collaborating on a document in Google Docs and people add comments to it, those comments go directly into Slack and I can reply from
Okay.
Slack. So I don't have to be flipping through a lot of different things. So Google Docs and Dropbox are both great options for file sharing.
Okay, and then Slack again. And Slack is that what we use at the chamber is Asana, and is that a complement of Slack or is it a competitor?
No, it's absolutely a complement.
Okay.
And it's something that I would strongly suggest companies look into if they don't already have a task management system. Asana is really customizable, so you can really make it fit your industry and your processes and your workflows. But it also integrates with Slack. Again, that integration part,
Yeah.
which I have hit on multiple times. And what's really nice is you can have a conversation on Slack about a problem you're having, and maybe you decide to do X to fix it. From Slack, you can just click a button and it will turn it into a task in Asana, and it'll have that conversation as context.
Okay.
So you don't have to remember to create tasks. You can just do it live while you're having that conversation or that meeting.
Okay. Well, I think here internally to kind of close things out, Brian. I think that from a chamber perspective, we think we're pretty progressive in using technology, sharing information, making sure that staff have open access to our documents. But it's still something that if we talked about going remotely tomorrow, there'd be components that we would want to implement. So we really appreciate you taking the time to highlight some things. Now, in this post is obviously going to be on social media as well. If people have specific questions about maybe a suggestion, a process or an application, could they pose that to you via social media, and is that something you could offer?
Yeah, I think what we can do is, if this is posted on Facebook, we can have that conversation there.
Okay.
So that if someone, because if one person has a question, I'm sure other people do.
Okay.
So that we can share it with everyone.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Well, we really appreciate everybody tuning in today. Brian, thank you for your time. And we just want to let everybody know that we're thinking of the local community as we go through the coronavirus pandemic. Obviously, the future is uncertain, and we want to get as much information out to our members as possible should things change, and they are changing on almost an hourly basis. So thanks for being with us today. We appreciate it.